this is the poly market page for the World Cup winners, right? And this is exclusively the Brazil line, which I don't really know what to make of it, honestly. Right, 9%. I think it's pretty good odds considering the other teams hired Argentina for some godforsaken reason. But I do not condone poly market, but I do think that it is quite a good um, metric of seeing how people really think about these kinds of things. And thinking of Brazil as a fifth highest likely winner, which sounds good, sounds pretty good, but it's Brazil, right? It's supposed to be the best national team in the world, and quite frankly, this is nowhere near the best national team in the world, right? The half of what Spain and France have is pretty crazy. So, how have Brazil set up? How will they set up the World Cup? What players did they take? How do I think they're gonna set up? And do they have a shot? All that and more. So these were the starting. These were the average positions, excuse me, for Brazil in these last two friendly games against France here on the left with the inverted numbers, and against Croatia here on the right. And we see two very different approaches, in my opinion. Well, no, they're not very different approaches. They're very different shapes. Excuse me. This one on the right was much more focused on, it feels like, interconnected play between the forwards, which didn't really function in the first half, right? When Rafinha, Cunha, João Pedro, and Vinicius were all on together, right? You can see Vinicius here on the left, and then this clump of players here. On the right, however, is a slightly different approach, which is more involved with spreading the pitch and using it for everything, for the entire width of the pitch, which I think it's shown pretty well by Luis Enrique's position right here, right? And then you can also see Cunha say a different position, and then João Pedro as the focal forward. Yeah, this is also Martinelli, not João Pedro, excuse me. So, right here you can see kind of this the second half, and this is where I think Brazil really showed what they were going to do in the World Cup, right? 1-0 down against France, one of the best national teams in the world, and Brazil start playing in a shape like this, right? You'd think, oh, Brazil is super exciting, super attacking team, right? They're going to have everyone forward. This is basically 6 players behind the ball. And you only have Matheus Cunha, Martinelli, which is kind of up front here, Vinicius on the touchline here, and Luis Enrique on the touchline here. And this is Casemiro going long into Luis Enrique. This is a better way of looking at it against a more passive mid-block team. Here with a 4-3-3, Matheus Cunha dropping into more of an 8 role alongside, this is Danilo from Botafogo. And again, once again, Luis Enrique here spreading the pitch, Vinicius Jr. here spreading the pitch. So, how does this look on a tactical board? What kind of players are they going to use? Let's get into it. Goalkeeper, I think Alisson pretty easily fits in, right? The other two keepers, Edison, Weverton. I read about Hugo Sousa, who's a pretty good penalty keeper. I thought he should have gone, maybe. Bento, I know Bento didn't really perform very well in the last camp, but I still really, really rate him, right? I still think he's Brazil's second best keeper for the national team, only behind Alisson. It's a shame that he didn't go. I really thought he was like a shoo-in for at least the number 3 spot. He wasn't, but it's whatever. He wasn't going to play anyways, right? Left back, I think it's going to be Douglas Santos. The other option being Alexandro. He's old. He hasn't played in a while for the national team. I really don't see him going to the playing very many minutes. Center backs, Gabriel and Marquinhos. I know a lot of people don't trust Marquinhos, and a lot of people think Gabriel's a little reckless. I trust this back line, right? There's obviously tons and tons of club experience, right? These two are in a Champions League final against each other, right? Being like they're kind of number 2 center backs, which is what worries me in their back line, right? Marquinhos has Pacha next to him, and Gabriel has Saliba next to him. But I still think that they're solid enough to go deep into the World Cup. Right back, I think it's going to be Wesley. I know a lot of people are saying Danilo. I think Danilo will play quite a lot especially because Wesley's gonna be going up and down and up and down and gonna get tired, I think, pretty quickly. I know a lot of people doubt his defensive abilities. I think he's okay defensively. I think he's very good going up the pitch, and depending on the exact approach that Ancelotti goes for, I think it's gonna vary quite a bit. And the two pivots I think is probably the easiest to pick. Their squad, right? Casemiro and Guimaraes, two of the best deep playmakers, deep midfielders in the Premier League last season. I think it's a pretty easy thing to see, right? Both of them together. Casemiro being the more reserved one, Guimaraes often pushing up to be that kind of right number 8 spot that I showed you with Danilo before. And then farther up the pitch, I think it's a rough choice, right? It's a rough choice. Obviously, Neymar going to the World Cup, being injured, but still going to the World Cup is gonna have a lot to do with that. João Pedro not being picked, thought was really weird, right? Rafinha, yes, you think he's a shoo-in, but Luis Enrique played really, really well against France and against Croatia, and I do think that he could go if Ancelotti goes for a certain approach. Speaking of approach, I think at this point it's important to address what kind of mentality Ancelotti is going for in the World Cup, right? So you think of Brazil as like this quick attacking, constantly go team, but I think Ancelotti evidently thinks of it quite differently, right? So here's a quote from him in a recent The Athletic interview saying, "But I do not forget that in '94 Brazil played with two lines of four with 4 strong defenders and 4 strong defensive midfielders: Mazinho, Dunga, Marcelo, Zinho. All midfielders, no wingers. 4 midfielders plus big talent up front in Romario and Bebeto." So this is referring obviously to 4-4-2, really defensively solid, right? And then he goes on to say, then in 2002, nobody forgets Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, Rivaldo. But I don't forget that for the first time in the World Cup, Brazil played with 3 center backs, right? And here he talks about the defensive organization being key to the success. And he's also said that the World Cup isn't won by the team that scores the most, it's the team that concedes the least. Which, like, it's a really weird thing to say for a Brazilian coach, right? You think, like, Roberto Diniz, who was this kind of big idealist and this kind of Brazil-minded coach that you think could take Brazil all the way, playing a Brazilian style. He was like all attack, basically, just constant attack. When you lose the ball, just counter press and get another attack going as quickly as possible, right? And so it's a crazy thing for a Brazil coach to say. I appreciate the sentiment. I don't like that mentality. I don't like it. I think Brazil shouldn't play to not concede. I think Brazil should go out and score more goals than the other team. I know that's a really oblivious thing to say, and really idealist, but I don't care. Okay. So keeping that in mind, he was talking about these 2 banks of 4 with the 4 strong defensive midfielders. I don't think that he's gonna rock up to the World Cup playing Guimaraes, Casemiro, and next to him Danilo and Paquetá, right? I think that's just absurdly passive. I don't think that would get by in today's game quite as well as you'd think. So what could be the difference between that and what he's doing now? Well, I do think Cunha and Vinicius are going to play. I think that's for sure. Vinicius, I really, really rate him. I know a lot of people say he's not very good. I really do rate him. Cunha does a lot of running. And he's not the most creative player, but he gets you up the pitch, right? And he can do stuff in the opponent's half, which I appreciate, right? Just getting the thing done, right? It's very easy to get lost in the horseshoe of passing back and forth. He just picks up the ball and can shoot from wherever. But a lot of the time it's not going to work out. I don't care. On the other side, I think it's a lot more interesting. Luis Enrique, I think I haven't seen too much of his defensive side, obviously, because he played most of his time against Croatia, and I don't really remember a lot about him before then. but he does seem to have good defensive numbers, and I do think he can function in this role here. And then up top, I think it would have to be Rafinha with Vinicius, right? Having, because they're both lethal on the counter, and allowing those two to be up front when Brazil are defending, which I'll get onto in a second. They should be in those areas. Now, when you're attacking, I think that there's a big difference there, right? You can see here, Vinicius doesn't really attack through the center. Luis Enrique a little more, but he's very clearly prone to playing on the wings, right? And I know, like, you'd want ideally the team to play like this, right? Because Vinicius, I don't think he plays very well as center forward, right? And like it's mainly his body position. So I put an example here against France. Here Wesley picks up the ball through the wing and drives inward, right? It's 4v4, really good situation for Brazil. In this situation, you want probably this guy to drop off into the space and then these two to keep on running. And you want the number 9 in this situation to just run selflessly. Probably not even plan to receive the ball until he has to finish it. But Vinicius here, just his body positioning is to like receive the ball, right? And he does end up receiving the ball. And by the time they're camped outside the box, Vinicius is fully turned around, right? Which I don't think is good number 9 play, which is why I think attacking he should absolutely be touchline winger, partly next to Luis Enrique. And then alongside them, obviously through the middle, Mateus Cunha and Rafinha. These heat maps, they do show a lot of stuff down the touchline, right? Especially Rafinha, but you also see a lot of play through the middle, right? I think that's something that they're really good at, being able to receive in the middle, just turning and getting the team going, right? But again, defensively, you can't expect Vinicius to track back, and that's a huge thing for Ancelotti, very clearly, the defensive side of the game. So they're most likely going to be defending like this. Defensive approach, I think you're going to see something very similar to what he was doing at Real Madrid, which was this kind of 2-4-2 mid block, right? Prevent passes through the center, force play out wide, and then kind of trap them there. Excuse me, I'm a little sick. But I have seen this team try to press, and honestly, it's not sad, it's just pathetic, I think. Because you just see the players just kind of trotting around, right? And Luis Enrique and Cunha can press, right? Rafinha as well. But if Vinicius doesn't do it, then the team can't do it, right? And I'm not throwing Vinicius under the bus here, saying that's just not his kind of playstyle. That's not something that he's going to do, and you got to adapt to the team in according to that. And Neymar as well. Neymar even less, right? Vinicius at least like covers space, right? Neymar's too injury prone to be doing shit. So yeah, I didn't prepare notes for this video, so I don't know what I'm talking about next. Okay, so the center forward situation, right? The forwards, right? I think these four are, you'd think they're shoo-ins for the positions, right? But Neymar, Igor Thiago, and Endrick, I think, could shake things up quite a bit. So let me talk about some variations. And Lucas Paquetá, but I'll talk about this first, actually. Something, right? I showed that kind of 4-3-3 that Brazil played against Croatia here, and I think it's Mateus Cunha here down the left, and I thought he was kind of awkward in this game. He was better moving forward, obviously, when he was more higher up the pitch around here. But when he was here, he was just kind of a little clunky for me. And I think he ended up playing there, mainly as a way for Ancelotti to like see the team and see how Paquetá would actually function there, right? So if Brazil do, probably later in the game, resort to a 3-man midfield, something like this, and then you probably drop like Luis Enrique and go for something along these lines, right? Be able to have a more solid base right? Perhaps allow Vinicius to stay more on the left out of possession, and kind of go maybe into something like this even, right? But yeah, to have more of a solid base, have more players on the counter. Thing here is you want Mateus Cunha in your team, and he doesn't really play as a number 9. He's a second forward essentially for me, so he should be playing behind number 9. So I think that's kind of, it's one approach. I don't think it's really a very suitable approach for the players in the squad. Maybe Joao Pedro could have done better, but he's not in the squad. Now, when Brazil is playing with the number 9, the question is going to be, do you want Igor Thiago as a more central, like, kind of focal point for the other attackers, or do you want Endrick? And I think it's going to vary a lot on game state. And I think it's going to vary a lot on the opponent. Right? Sorry. So when you're playing against like more of a low block, against someone like Haiti, right? You're probably gonna be just looking for, a big guy in the box who's gonna be able to finish chances more so than kind of create them with other teammates, which is where I think Igor Thiago is gonna really fit in. Igor Thiago is probably gonna be a better fit for Cunha, particularly because he's gonna be able to kind of not worry as much taking up the number 9 position, be able to roam more so, right? And be able to take advantage of these kinds of spaces that open up in front of the opponent's back line. And in other teams, especially like more mid blocks or like higher pressing teams, maybe you'd want someone who, yes, can still play back to goal, but will mostly carry you up the pitch. And I think that carry you up the pitch is what really makes Endrick like stand out in this kind of role, because I'm honestly like always really impressed with Endrick. I think he's small, but he's like really strong. I think he's really developed that kind of side to his game in the past few months, not months, a couple of years, and really. So yeah, the players behind him, I think you're mostly gonna expect Rafinha, Cunha, and Vinicius to be the players playing there. If you end up going for Cunha at number 9, I don't think it's gonna be very suited. He's gonna be very suited to that. I think you could play Rafinha behind him, as I mentioned, the 2 up front kind of approach, and then Luis Enrique to the left, and really allow you to stretch the pitch there. The question then is gonna be, what do you do with Wesley, right? So something you could do with Wesley is playing through the left and have Danilo on the right, and allow Wesley to get into this half space instead. Probably gonna be when Cunha is not playing, so like maybe with Igor Thiago there. And then like Danilo plays a more supporting role here, perhaps even inverting, as we saw in the last World Cup when Guimaraes pushes up, or forming a back 3 like this, and allowing Rafinha to roam in this kind of half space. When you have like more settled possession and stuff, or be able to even go into this kind of shape. But yeah, that's a lot more ballsy. That's gonna have a lot to do with the mentality, the game state, and yeah, I think the really interesting part about this Brazil team is that there's no central focal point for going up the pitch. Like no big playmaker that Argentina has with Messi, or like Spain has with Pedri. Like that player in like the third line of attack, the attacking midfield line, that's going to be able to connect your midfield with your attack, be able to create those chances for those forwards who just want, they need service basically. There's no player really there in the team to do that other than Neymar, who I don't think is going to be playing very much. But I think that's a bit of a weakness, but that's also kind of a strength, right? Like, I can't think of any recent teams that did that and won a tournament, which isn't promising. But I guess like Portugal, Euro 2012, they had a pretty varied attack, but they rely more on samples. My point is, being able to have multiple pieces of your attack, be able to kind of create something out of nothing instead of relying on one guy to be constantly doing something, allows you to become really unpredictable. And having these different kinds of players, these different kinds of really good players who can play through many systems, many tempos, many ideologies of play, allows you to have a lot of flexibility in your team, in how you're going to approach the game against your opponent. And I think that means that Brazil isn't necessarily ill-equipped for any kind of opponent, right? And you think like, oh, maybe like low block, mid block teams, more passive teams, but like Brazil beat Croatia, and I'm not saying that's a super replicable result, but last World Cup they went out against the very similar Croatia team, one that's arguably less defensive that back then, right? And this time they put 3 past them. So I'm not saying Brazil's gonna win the World Cup. I haven't really made up my mind on who's gonna win the World Cup. What I am saying is, I've seen so many people talking about how terrible, how trash this Brazil team is. This is a good Brazil team. It just is not as flashy as you would usually think, right? It's got the right players. It's all going to be about whether in those important games they're going to be able to click, right? The consistency of the team. And to be honest, these players, I think they're pretty consistent, right? Igor Thiago is the second highest goal scorer in the Premier League. Endrick has just spent 6 months at Lyon and been an incredible player, right? Vinicius is coming back off the back of one of his best seasons ever, off the back of another one of his best seasons ever, off the back of another one of his best seasons ever, right? He's consistently hitting those high numbers. I think over a 7-8 game World Cup, he can very much hit those levels. Especially being with the manager who got him to that level in the first place, right? So what's my point? Don't disqualify Brazil just because you don't like the players that they're taking. Don't disqualify them because you have Leo Pereira in your backline, Danilo and Alex Sancho. Don't disqualify them because they're taking a Premier League reject for their midfield. 2 Premier League, 3 theory. These guys have all played in the Prem, whatever. Don't disqualify them because you have no idea who Luis Enrique is. Don't disqualify them because Endrick struggled at Real Madrid. And don't disqualify them because Igor Thiago can't score when there's more than 3 people watching him. Right? Just, this is a team. This is a team that can do something with a manager who's very competent. I have faith in them. And I hope you do too. Thank you so much for watching. I'm probably not going to do another preview before the friendlies, and then after that I'm probably going to do a video on Argentina, maybe one on Ecuador. I'll see what I can do about that, whether I enjoy watching Ecuador or not. And yeah, check out the Substack. I'm going to be writing more stuff there. I'll maybe covering some European teams, and yeah, I'll see you next video.